So imagine my surprise when it turned out we had another Atlantis episode being kicked around. And here I thought the best exit would be the date rape episode. So let's get down to it. Before I Sleep is late season 1, set on Dr. Weir's birthday. And to again prove that despite my occasional exasperation, I don't dislike this show, a good part of that is shown by the complete lack of a surprise party. Surprise parties in fiction are almost always the domain of hacks. They are a black hole for happiness. Instead, after a brief giving of a gift, we get to explore the city, where as Rodney babbles about his real estate needs, Ford finds a lab. No surprise, as Rodney points out, this place is crawling with labs. Part of being a super ultra advanced genius, is needing a lab or 50. But what's surprising here is the discovery of a woman in stasis. And after the titles, everyone is arguing over what to do when you find a canned old person. Carson thinks that unfreezing her is too dangerous. Rodney thinks at this point she's already on death's door. If they're going to get any answers, delaying is not going to help. Besides, what can you really do? Because, as cliche as it is, she's not getting any younger. So waiting for her to not be really, really old isn't really a plan I see working out. The reason talking to her would be a huge help is because the records indicate that she's probably an ancient, as she's been here for 10,000 years.
It's only a good day over 9,000.
Grapefruit diet works wonders. Weir finally agrees to unfreeze her, where they discover a note clutched in her hand. It says, "If you can read this, you unfroze me. Congratulations, dumbasses, you now have the plague." Now, this thing is full of gate addresses, but no time to check out what they mean. The woman wakes up, muttering, "It worked." She's wheeled off to the infirmary to get taken care of. Probably an IV of Ensure would be a good start. While Rodney and Shepard muse about if there are any more people frozen around the city. After all, as is pointed out, it's like checking every single room on the island of Manhattan. But that's going to be involved. Carson finally reports in.
Is our patient awake?
Aye, and she's saying the most peculiar things.
Is that just in general, or adjusted for the fact that a lot of people you meet that age mutter things about texting being the work of the devil and that the world is secretly run by the Jews? But what she eventually reveals is that, in fact, she's Dr. Weir, after some time travel hijinks. Rodney seems skeptical when the choices are time machine or the 10,000-year-old woman is not altogether there, but he does concede that time travel isn't forbidden by relativity. And, of course, he gets into an argument with Shepard over Back to the Future. After further looking into it, Rodney does confirm that part of her story checks out. To wake up when they arrive, there was a record of the place powering up when they showed up. It shows that she was trying to come out of stasis at that time, but they shut that thing back down again in order to conserve power, not seeing it as anything more than a power drain while they were trying to avoid the whole drowning horribly thing. He also takes the opportunity to explain the multiverse theory, that this isn't necessarily Dr. Weir's future, just one of many futures that could have happened. He doesn't bring up Back to the Future to help explain that, though, because, again, he's mad at that movie. Rodney is super excited when she wakes up, but eventually Old Weir gets a word in edgewise to start telling her story. When the Atlantis team arrived on Atlantis for the first time, things started the same as they had for this group, if you can follow me. There was a key difference, though, between the two experiences. Power systems came online in the control room in the version that we saw, but when Old Weir was there was no power. The first hint that something changed thanks to the time travel. Unfortunately, after her 3 o'clock nap, it's time for her 3:05 nap, so Dr. Weir is hoping that Carson can give Old Weir some stimulant so they can have more of a chance to learn of what happened. Grudgingly, he finally gives in. I suppose you can't get any more next of kin than your younger self. Dr. Weir's story is similar to before. They discovered the city is underwater, but unlike before, the power is diminishing much more rapidly. So much so that Sumner and his team are drowned not long after the discovery that they were even underwater. Things are going to hell fast, so Dr. Weir brings up the jumpers that were just found. Some of them could get in them in case they can't figure out any place to gate to. They just arrived, they don't know where any of the planets are. Not to mention winding up on a planet that turned out inhospitable, or, they wouldn't know this yet of course, but going through a space gate. Escaping drowning for the vacuum of space is at best a lateral move. It's not going to make a difference, though. The city is sealing bulkheads all over the place, trapping their people in areas that are already starting to flood. So much for you can't be too careful, huh? Shepard and Zelenka have found that one of the jumpers is different. It's got different controls than the others, and a photon torpedo or something inside of it. But while Zelenka fiddles with it, the good news keeps coming. The gate room is sealed off now, and that room too is flooding. Rodney spent his last few moments trying in vain to open the doors to the jumper bay in the hopes of at least letting those on board escape. But they didn't have the power to do that, and he drowned.
Man wonders how he would choose to go out given such dire circumstances. No, I know.
Trying to save the lives of others.
But ultimately failing.
Wow, you're a real dickhead sometimes. Can't even let someone else be the hero for 10 seconds, can you? Anyway, while everyone else was drowning, alternate dickhead, Zelenka, and Dr. Weir are safe inside of that experimental jumper. And next thing they know, they're suddenly in space, having bypassed the whole flying part of that. While they're trying to figure out how they managed to pull that off, Wraith darts show up. No way of knowing what happened next. The old Weir collapses. I guess Carson might know a thing or two about his own profession after all. When she finally comes around, the story continues. Shepard managed to shoot one dart down, but the rest shoot up the jumper and, well, when Weir comes to, learns that she's the only one to survive. Janus, the guy that she met when she woke up, was able to save her, but Shepard and Zelenka had died in the crash. Rodney takes a moment to poke some fun back at Fat Fingers McCrashy for this screw-up, before letting old Weir get back to the story. She was brought before the Council of Important Dudes, who aren't mad at her but are quite peeved with Janus. His playing around with time experiments means that the future she left, where Atlantis survived for 10,000 years, is now in question. Though to be optimistic, heck, they're just as uncertain now as they were before, so no harm, no foul there. They explained about the Wraith, how the Atlanteans tried to negotiate a truce, but the Wraith refused. I'm sure you're shocked to learn that. With the fact the Wraith are just overwhelming them with their Zerg strategy, they've decided to head for Earth and invite Dr. Weir to join them. And by invite, I mean pretty much insist. When she asks to be sent back to her time with the ZPM, she's refused. Though, to be fair, it's a hard sell. Can I borrow an insanely powerful handheld reactor and a time machine? I am totally good for that. So her choices are go to Earth or go somewhere in the Wraith-controlled galaxy. Not really much of a choice, is there? Janus tries to make the case again, but the problem is that he sounds like a grade A tool. So it's no wonder that the leader of the council, Moras, finally yells at him to shut up about his stupid time machine that he was told not to make in the first place. The irony is that Mr. Toe, the line leader, would, after ascending, come back and start meddling despite the ancients' no meddling rule. But that's in the future. Right now, he's just a guy who's angry that he'll have to ascend to a higher plane of existence before he can restore his hair. Bend time, travel between galaxies, but can't make a decent hair tonic. I hate this place. Back in the present, 10,000 years, even in stasis, takes a toll, and Carson doesn't suspect that she'll survive the night. So she insists on finishing her story. Janus lobbied on her behalf to another council member, Melia, the one in the hologram that they saw back in Rising, but the best she can do is ensure that the Stargate on Atlantis can't be dialed to keep them from coming here and drowning. But Weir gives a short speech about how the human race are explorers, with dramatic music to underscore it, so that you might forget that if they had blocked the gate, billions of lives in the Pegasus galaxy would have been spared from the Wraith's early waking thanks to the Atlantis team's arrival. Melia still refuses, so Janus decides to take action himself. Remember, he's the guy who, working alone, succeeded in doing something that an entire colony of ancients failed to do back in Window of Opportunity. He's a pretty smart cookie, and comes across like the guy who would be the first, second, and third to tell you that. He sets up the 3 ZPMs to work differently to stretch out their power usage, but that'll require someone hanging around to swap their power between them when the time comes. And you can guess who's got that job. She's stuck in stasis while the rest are told that she already left, and they don't argue. The Wraith just took out their last transport full of evacuees. They don't really have time to worry about what happened to her. So Weir took the long way back, hence the double meaning of the title. This happens before she goes to sleep in stasis. But also you might remember this from Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by early 20th century hip-hop artist Robert Frost. For past Dr. Weir, she had the long journey to go on before she could be allowed the sleep of death, shown in the works ending with, "But I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep." And of course ends with his signature, "Bobby Frost is in the house!" Just in case this plan doesn't work, he set it up so that Atlantis will float to the surface. That's why when it reached critical power, it came back to the surface again. It was Janice's failsafe. Even the failsafe had a failsafe. The note that she kept with her? It's a list of outposts that might have ZPMs. She delivers the message just in time to die, but I guess when you're a time traveler, you probably have good timing. We haven't had the best of luck with Carl Binder's stuff on this show. Letters from Pegasus, Critical Mass, and Irresistible particularly standing out. Before I Sleep was his first for the show, and by comparison it stands up very well, giving this episode a stamp of recommended. Even though this is very much focused on what could have beens and the ancient Atlanteans, the crux of the episode is the character work for Elizabeth Weir, perhaps best illustrated with the low-key inclusion of her birthday, symbolic of the fact that she was given new life thanks to the actions of her past self, sacrificing her own lifetime to bring this about. Many moments exist between the two reflecting the natural insight that Weir has with herself, spurred on by the fact that she has seen these people die and has had a chance to make it right again, and wants to give herself the confidence to succeed in making that count for something. But the other stuff is interesting as well, especially the scene of Atlantis' final days and a first-hand look at why the evacuation was necessary, as they are unable to protect one of their own ships full of refugees from being overwhelmed near their own system. These powerful beings are just that helpless. In the face of that, the task for our heroes is all the more daunting. Also, it's fortunate that of the three on board, it was her that survived, since she could speak the language of the ancients. I think if Zelenka knew any, it was probably just technical stuff, and Shepard would probably at best be able to ask where the bathroom was. But it's easy to see from all this why Binder would graduate to series regular, even if I found some of his other work unimpressive. This episode was a good fusion of character work and drama, plus some good-natured banter. Probably a better one to exit Atlantis on than Irresistible.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
Ah, the bitter taste of ultimate failure.
Well, if you had just figured out how to fix the damn shield in the first place, none of us would have died.
I did everything I could, including valiantly attempting to save your story.
Gentlemen,